With every moon and every sun, there's a death, another gun, as it's pulled on the trek to these European shores. Numbered days take a chance, another life. This is France, hearts still bleeding hope on these European shores. Dodging bombs, finding boats, all these bodies trying to float, shivering on the wasteland of these European shores. Another king, another queen, prevented 'cause of melanin from living amongst our European shores. All the stories, all the tears, all the mothers trying to rear their scared little children on these European shores. Running kids, hiding teens, dodging police, don't get seen, trying to survive on these European shores. With every truck, there's a door, prized open, lucky draw. As smugglers become heroes on these European shores. Brown-skinned woman looks like me, except that I can cross the sea from a sick, twisted fate of these European shores. Praying in your homes, but your money sending drones that make these people flee to our European shores. Every odd stacked against them, every border to prevent them. What must it be to run? To ever shutting doors? Why aren't we tearing off the hinge, welcoming, letting in our sibling soldiers from terror-troubled shores? No more days, no more sun, no more running. It is done. This is blood we've helped shed in this global-funded war. Everything I've just shared with you is something I've seen from my time spent in refugee camps in Calais. I've been involved in the crisis for 2 years now, and it's changed my life forever. Now, before I go on, I'd just like to start by sharing some stats with you, because they don't really add up with this damning portrayal that we see in the media. So some of you might be quite surprised to know that the total number of refugees and asylum seekers in the UK doesn't even total to 1%. Not even close, in fact. 0.24% of the UK is full up with refugees. And our out-of-control numbers across Europe are actually only 11% of the total global population of refugees. 8 out of 10 hosting countries are in Africa. This is something I would really like you to bear in mind the next time you see a headline from our horrifically biased media. So I got involved in the crisis simply from seeing the same stuff we all have, and baby Aylan Kurdi being washed up on the shore was the last straw for me. So I turned up in Calais one weekend. No experience, no training. I wasn't even going on behalf of an organization, just a human on behalf of humanity. And 2 years on, I'm still going back because I've seen what we're capable of when we come together. Just last month, I met the sweetest 14-year-old boy. He's from Afghanistan. He'd been locked in solitary confinement for 2 months without daylight. He also had a fractured skull from being beaten in the head with a metal pole. That metal pole wasn't struck upon him by other refugees. It was, in fact, the police. Still, when we met him, he had nothing but love and smiles for us. There was a family of 4 who crossed the Mediterranean to get to Europe. Only by the time I met them, they were a family of 3. They lost their daughter when they crossed to the sea, the very sea that we holiday in. I've had fully grown men collapse onto me as they recall seeing their mothers, fathers, wives killed in front of them. There is only me now, sister, they say. And I've seen scars on the bodies of pregnant women being beaten by the authorities simply because they have different papers to me. Women that actually look pretty similar to me, meaning that I have to have my passport on me at all times when I go to the camps for protection from the same beating. The passport that I just received in a lottery at birth, the same lottery that you received yours. And you'd think, these people have so many reasons to choose hate or anger, bitterness, resentment. The treatment that they receive for their simple want of safety. And yet, they only choose love. That fierce, moving mountains, reason we're alive kind of love. And it's this that's kept me going back. Because despite living in squalor amongst rats, with a world that has genuinely turned its back on them, they still smile, they still share love with each other, and they have an immense amount of hope. The strength of a connection that I've made in a day or even a few hours with complete strangers is the most powerful part of being alive. I've learnt that now. And yet, most of us miss out on this, don't we? Bit weird, hanging around, talking to strangers. In fact, the first piece of advice we receive as children is, don't talk to strangers. And it's then that you can see we've actually invested in the opposite of unity. We've become so afraid of each other, and this has governed the way we are now, and it's this that's so damaging. I have nothing but respect and love for these people who I now call my friends. They're people that have inspired me, that have made me look at my own life, and actually also the rest of the world. It was the end of 2016 where a lot of these things intensified for me. Brexit had hit, Trump had been elected, and the toll of displaced people due to war had risen to 65 million. It's now 65.5. That's the whole of the UK. And so I turned to a friend for some guidance. He's 78. He's very much still an active activist. And I felt some sort of comfort in being able to turn to him to see if things were really as bad as they felt. He hesitated before he answered me. And then he said, actually, yes, I feel they are. Now, I'm not sure what I expected him to say, and you probably think I feel pretty deflated after that. Thanks, Luke. But what surprised me more than his frankness was my own reaction. I felt this huge surge rise up within me, and somehow I understood that we are here, all of us, in these exact times for a reason. And that feeling that I felt within me was that of love. That same powerful love that our friends in the camp choose over everything. And for some reason, love's come to be known as this fluffy thing and doesn't really account for much, when in reality, it's the very thing that we're all here because of. Love is quite simply an energy force. And if you look closely enough, you'll see this reflected in you everywhere. So, let me help you. We're currently spinning on a planet at 1,000 miles an hour, yet we can't feel it. On a round planet that is 70% water, yet the water doesn't fall out. And we circle a 4.6 billion year old ball of fire that's just floating in the sky. And then there's another floating ball that controls our tide, and trees breathe out oxygen so that we can breathe it in. And here we are, these weirdo bones covered in skin things that can walk, talk, eat, dance, laugh, cry, and we rarely even acknowledge the fact that we're all part of this crazy energy miracle. It's so crazy, in fact, it sounds like I'm making it up. So why, when we live on a planet so intricately designed, do we have any doubt that we are here for a reason too. This perspective becomes really real when being in the camps, and it's actually also what makes it really hard to adjust coming home, because everything's just business as usual here, like life is fine, like there aren't thousands of people I've just left. Children without parents, men and women sleeping on frozen ground, all just 30 miles from our doorsteps. And to think, if this was the UK, America, Australia, Canada, France, if these nations were suddenly seeking refuge, would the world react the same then? So tell me why this is happening. It came to the point where volunteering wasn't enough anymore. I could feel this pressure sat in me. And whilst I was trying to figure out what on earth little old me could do, I asked myself, what's hurting you most about this, Yaz? And I realized it was apathy. Apathy was hurting the most. With a show of hands, how many of you have seen or heard something about the state of humanity that has upset you? It doesn't matter what it's about. Keep those hands up if you've seen something like this more than once, or twice, or 5 times. How much more do we need to see to take action? In times where we are so technically connected, more than we have ever been, we've become so disconnected from that which makes us human. So, I decided apathy is a thing that we've got to kill. And it's not an easy thing. And I don't believe that it's actually that people don't care. I know that's not true. It's that the feeling of helplessness has become so overwhelming that it's become the norm to just think, what can I do? And so instead of doing something, we choose nothing. I've actually got a friend who I met up with recently, and he said to me, oh, you know what, Yaz? Sometimes you make me feel well bad. I look at what you're doing. You're going out there and helping people, and I just think, I'm not doing anything for the world. And then I feel like, the world's always going to have problems. It always has. So there's not much point, really, is there? This is apathy at its worst. We all fall into that habit, and me also. I'm included in this. But is that okay? Is it acceptable to just say the world's always had problems? Sure, if we continue doing what we've always done, we're going to get what we always have, right? It's time now for us to remember the power that each of us can make individually, especially those of us who have a roof over our head, some food in the fridge, and some money in the bank. That makes us the top 10% of people in the world. So if we don't do anything about it, who does? We've not been given all of this privilege just for our own lives and jobs, mortgages, and Netflix and chill. We've been given this power to influence not only our governments, but each other too. And although I know it might seem it, the crazy politicians, and there are enough of them right now, they're not our biggest problem. Apathy is. Apathy, inaction, and silence are actually the wider enemies of a bigger picture. And it's this that we can no longer stand for. So, to do something about this, I decided to start a movement. And it's a movement called Stand for Humanity. Stand for Humanity came out of nowhere. I never planned to do this. I was just going along to volunteer in the camps. But it's something that I realize can help us. It can help us bridge the gap from those in need and those that care, but just feel a bit helpless and don't really know where to start. So each of you have a card on your chair. And I'd like you to just take a moment to think about one issue that you really care about. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be refugees. TED audience at home, you can do this too. And just think about one thing that you can do to make a difference to that issue. It's a pledge to do something for the sake of humanity. So it could be that it really breaks your heart when you see a homeless person. So rather than worrying about whether you should give them change or rushing by or thinking, oh, I'm feeling guilty because you don't have anything to give, why don't you make a pledge to spend 5 minutes a week, a month, just having a chat with them, find out their name, make that connection. Or loneliness in the aging population. There could be an elderly person who lives on your road that you know lives alone. They could really do with your company, just once a week, for a cup of tea. It's these little ways that we have to come home to each other and remember each other. Because whilst our governments and world leaders are not leaving us anything to feel proud of at the moment, we can be proud of each other. Remember, that's what we're here for. That actually, they don't speak for us. We speak for ourselves. Once you've made your pledge, take a photo of your pledge card with it and upload it to social media, tagging Stand for Humanity. And you might inspire another to do the same. Because once we do this, once we start coming together, showing our compassion, our love for each other, we start changing the world. Instead of passively accepting the state of the world the way it is, we invite possibility in. Because just like everything else on this planet was made for a reason, we too were made for these times. And whilst my friend did say that this was the worst he had seen things in his 78 years, he also said, but there are far more of us on the good side now. Thank you.